Da 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 da! What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I bring what I learn in those lessons of life, those bits of movement that each one of us want to make in order to make ourselves a little bit more comfortable in what can often seem like a very long journey, or depending on how you look at it, a very short journey. In my family, this generation that I'm from, me and my three sisters, we are pretty much on my father's side the only ones to have made it into their 50s. It was quite the norm. There's a lot of congenital heart disease, a lot of addictions, a lot of poverty mindset, a lot of abuse, right? But there's a lot of perseverance and a lot of heart in my family, and somehow, some way, right, some of those lessons were able to be passed along to each one of us, right, to make it possible, right, through that little bit of movement that maybe my grandfather made, my grandmother made, my father made, my mother made, and her family, right? That as we not necessarily always get mentorship, get good guidance, good upbringing. My family were nomads. It was kind of everybody's fending for themselves, even though my parents always put a roof over our heads and always made sure that there were meals on the table, right? It's just in that idea that, we would all like to do a little bit better by our children, right? Even though we might not have gotten that ourselves. And you hear it all the time. And we find that we turn our children into little narcissists or little spoiled beings because of our desire to make our children's life a little bit better. Now, my mother worked a little bit differently. I mean, if I was running down the sidewalk and I wiped out and I skinned my knees, I'm more than likely to get a good spanking for being so clumsy rather than a hug and a little bit of love to get me through, right? Like, let me kiss your boo boo kind of idea. In all truth, my mother wasn't a very affectionate person in any manner to me or any of my sisters. She wasn't touchy feely in any way. She never hugged or kissed her children. She never told her children how much she loved them. And she must have loved her children. Right? You know, but in being, and this word we got this week, spectator, we're leading into it, right? We're leading into it, was that idea that even as a small child, that I picked up on these things, that I recognized how different my mother was, how different my father was, how different everybody was compared to me. Even within that comparison with my sisters, I would say all the time that my sister Tracy, she could eat whatever she wanted and not gain a pound. It was just a big running joke in our family. It caught up to her when she hit her 20s, right? But as a teenager, oh my goodness, she would have the boys after her, and she was so beautiful. She really was a beautiful woman inside and out, right? But so different from me. Each one of our sisters grew up being independent, strong women, even without that, right? That parentage that possibly now I'm thinking of something right in this moment when I say that sometimes our parents are not the great examples for us, right? But they want to do better by their children than what they were done by themselves. And I would have to say, my father, I didn't find out until after he passed away, 47 years old. So my entire childhood, teenage years, young adulthood, I never knew that my dad drank. It wasn't something I learned about until after my father passed away. And then my mother told me that my dad was a big drinker, but he never ever wanted his children to see him drunk. It did happen once when he came home passed out, and we ended up phoning the ambulance because my dad had the oldest of the children, right? I was the babysitter. I was babysitting by the time I was 7 years old. But all of these experiences as a spectator gave me an opportunity because I had that curious mind and because I wanted to know why my mother didn't like me like other parents liked their children or loved their children or showed affection to their children or wanted to better the lives of their children where right my mom didn't care we grew up feral but at the same time we grew up independent, strong. There were only four girls. We had no boys in my family. I was the oldest of the four girls. Right? Each one of us grew up to be very unique and individuals, right? Very independent and able to stand on our own 2 feet, be able to make our own choices when it came to I don't know political ideas, what we wanted to do when we grew up, even our religious ideas because my mother was very devout in her Christianity even though she wasn't quite sure what denomination she was. She was a searcher for sure. And my father was very spiritual and he kept those ideas and those beliefs and well, I'm going to say actions because it was in his uh, actions that he became the evidence for me in being that spectator, right? That I woke up to some of these ideas that I have very late in my life, right? Putting my father's memory on a shelf when he passed away. I don't know what it was, but somehow, some way, an experience came across my path. Characters came across my path that just signaled in that what they were representing in their mission statements and in the lessons that they were putting out to the world, how they were serving and helping people. I just recognized my father immediately, right? And as an adult and as somebody with a curious mind, it caught my attention immediately, right? And I delved in. I delved in searching because I had a clue like Hansel and Gretel, those breadcrumbs, and I would just pick them up, of course, right along the way, and it just got me into the lessons. And I was a terrible student, right? So I'm so grateful that my hypervigilance for my own safety, because there's more than just being a strict mom. And she had her own issues, my mother, right? Uh, she was the provider, the main provider in the family in a day and age where women were just beginning to, you know, look for their own rights and their own individuals. And I'm sure she gave up dreams for herself. My mother loved art and she was very artistic, and I'm sure she had dreams for herself, and she gave up a lot of things in her life that she might have, right, wanted for herself, because she chose my father, and in choosing my father she lived, right, vicariously through my father's dreams and my father's lust for life, his determination to fill his life up with as much adventure and with as much experience as he possibly could, because he was diagnosed with congenital heart disease, because he knew he didn't have long to live, but because he loved life and he wasn't going to let that stop him, and because he was possibly scared. I mean, can you imagine being given that sentence very, very young, right? My father wasn't even in his 20s when the doctor told him that, he didn't have long to live. And yet he got to be able to get married and have children and bring those children up, but he didn't have much time in actually divvying out those lessons. He spent a lot of time with us, but that time was the experience, the adventure, and us going along with him, filling up his life with the most spectacular adventures that he possibly could. If he had the opportunity, he would have stayed until, right, well into his 80s, 90s, 100s. That wasn't the story for him. He made it to be 47 years old. He lived almost twice as long as what the doctors designated as his lifespan. And can you imagine? He woke up every day, right? And the first thing on his mind would be, this could be my very last day of my entire life. What am I going to do with it? Right? What kind of experiences? And I think, what kind of evidence can I be for my children? Because my father was the evidence for me. Because if I wasn't paying attention, if my hypervigilant, and if I wasn't so codependent and so in love with my father, I wouldn't have recognized that character when I had bumped into it again, right? That I would have missed out that opportunity to take in the most vital of all lessons that could have possibly have come across my path, to kind of get me on my path, to get me to where I'm sitting right now. And that all came from being just a spectator, not a participant, not a student, right? That was just me, just paying attention, right? Just going along for the ride, not even having a choice in any of that, and having questions about that, and not having those answers, not even being woke to some of the possibilities of what answers could be, right? Literally, not a chance in hell. And yet, somehow, some way, right, in that paying attention, in being a spectator and bumping into it when it came across my path, and having it, right, that little breadcrumb just entice me like that. And right, that's all that it was needed. And all of a sudden, Cindy's an amazing student. Like, immediately, right? I couldn't get enough, because it was answering questions that I had always had my entire life. There was a time where I was a spectator and wasn't seeing anything, right? That was a spectator. Now it's different. I'm still my hypervigilance, I will always be a spectator, right? Something, oh, what was that? Right? I will always be in that. That's the nurturing that is now my nature, right? And I don't suspect that well, anything anytime soon is going to make that any less of a trait of mine, right? And especially now when I see the evidence in my life of what happens when I do pay attention, when I am a spectator, right? And it's in my choices whether to move from being a spectator to a participant. And when I'm saying being a participant, that participant in my own movement, right? My own movement. And my own movement dictated that all of a sudden I was going to be a good student, right? And as it is to a good teacher, I don't know. I sit in the middle. I suspect that I'm going to be relatable to a very, I don't think for long, a small crowd, but for now, right? For now, because I do believe that, as we move forward and as technology picks up a little bit of that slack, it will help to ease us in. Just like YouTube has helped me out so much, that Google, just being able to Google a lot of these questions and a lot of these things that I've never heard before, right? But because I'm interested, because I'm curious, right? That I want to be able to understand, right? This is my experience and I don't want to feel like I'm missing out. And again, in that idea that I'm creating the best human being I possibly can, I want to stuff my life full too. And even though I don't have children, I do come here and share that content, right? And it's there for anybody. And these aren't necessarily lessons that, right, that I've come up with, but lessons that I've stumbled across, experiences and conversations, adventures, right? It's YouTube videos, it's Googling, it's Wikipedia, right? And it's in my own set of routines that make it possible for me to do a little bit of that mentorship for myself right now. That's pretty good. That's big for me. That's me trusting myself. That's really big. That's that's so big. It makes me happy to be able to say that, right? It makes me very happy to say that. And it is being in that spectator. Okay, but I just wanted to say something else just because it just popped into my mind. Today I had a little bit of an experience. I'm not a napper. When I get up in the morning, I am done until it's time to go to bed at night because I am a little bit about routine when it comes to my sleep. I know how it affects my life and how it keeps me healthy, and it keeps me in a state of frame of mind that I have my mind. I'm not overtired. I'm not thinking about my bed. I'm not thinking about plopping into my chair, right? And it's because I have that routine. Me and my sister went out today. And I tell you, as we're driving home, she starts yawning. I start yawning. She goes, "Oh, I think I'm going to take a nap." I says, "Oh my goodness, I'm feeling tired now too." Says, "I'm not a napper though." I says, "I won't be taking any nap." And I came home and I plopped myself in my chair, like, right? And I turned on the computer and started taking in a few lessons and had some lunch, and all of a sudden I'm like this, and I'm sitting in my chair and I'm dozing off, and I actually dozed off. I woke up and I went, right, maybe today I will have a nap. I'm not a napper. I usually will take a nap when I go on long vacations, and after I got all my gear in the house, I'll lock the door and have a quick shower, and I'll just go straight to bed for a few hours, right? And then I get up and start all my unpacking and stuff and get my life back. back on track. But for the norm, I don't nap. And I went and laid down, and within 1 or 2 minutes, I was out. Like, I don't even remember. I remember closing my eyes and thinking, "Oh, a nap, Cindy." That was the last thing, and I was out shortly after 5 o'clock at night. I woke up, and I was in an absolute panic. I was going 100 miles an hour. I looked at my I looked at my phone. I saw what time it was, and I went, "Oh my goodness! I slept. I slept in, right?" And I went through this routine for, I guess, about 7 minutes, where I'm rushing around and I'm trying to get dressed really fast and fix my hair and grab my phone and phone them to say, like, I was supposed to start work hours ago. Like, nobody even phoned me. And as I'm saying that, I'm going, "Cindy, it's your day off. it's your it's your day off today, right?" And immediately a rush of relief came over me. The second thought that came over me was, "Oh my goodness, I feel pretty good after after that nap." The third thing that came to mind, and I took note of this, right? Just kind of being a spectator of me stumbling over myself, looking at the phone, right? And thinking I have to go to work, in that little few-minute frame of panic that I was in, was the reasoning in the panic, and that I was worried. I was worried for my shift. I was worried, what did they do without me? I was worried, were they okay? Are they working short staffed? And I went, "Oh my goodness, that's so amazing." It wasn't like I was worried I was going to get in trouble, right? I've never missed a day of work in my entire life. And that didn't even come into my mind. "Oh my goodness, I ruined my lifetime career run of never missing a day at work." Right? It's pretty good. I would have to say that's a pretty good thing. That's my claim to fame when it comes to my work experience. And I've had lots and lots of jobs, right? Now, it's kind of nice today that I'm thinking about, "Oh my goodness, I let them down," right? Because I've never had that experience of not showing up for work at all, right? Or missing the shift at work. So I have no idea what that reaction in myself would have been, right? If there would be guilt and shame. And there was none of that. There was just like, "Oh my goodness, I hope they're okay. I hope they managed okay. I'll give them a call and let them know," right? Right? Do they want me to come into work for an hour or two? Do they want that? Or just am I just going to take that hit and say, "Okay, Cindy, you can never say that you've never missed a day of work." But that came from being a spectator in a reliving, right? Reliving that experience of me, right? Just watching myself as if I'm watching a movie of me panicking and stumbling and trying to get dressed and fixing my hair and grabbing my phone, seeing the time of it, and then, right, and then, like I said, rushing around trying to get ready, and then grabbing my phone again to phone my boss. And I guess I wouldn't have phoned my boss. I would have phoned the store to see what they did with the shift that I was supposed to work. I know they would have been okay because, right, I am that person who shows up no matter what. If I'm scheduled, I'm there. And even though I've never missed a day of work, you can bet I don't work with anybody that hasn't missed work. Nobody, everybody. And yet Cindy's that dependable one. But it kind of warmed my heart, right? When I recognized the reasoning in me feeling bad and stumbling over myself as to why I was going 100 miles an hour. And it was kind, right? It was worry, and it was in that caregivership of well, I guess my accountability to my job, right? So it was a little bit of lesson in that for me, right? And I was just a spectator in backtracking an action that I had taken when I had woken up. I don't know if anybody is interested in that, but it came to my mind, so I threw it out there, right? I threw it out there because, I'm thinking at one point, right? I don't have that claim to fame. Maybe now, because now it's kind of a competition with myself, right? To always show up for work. But in my younger years, I do believe it was a fear of losing my job that made it so that I always showed up, right? It was my fear of well, I guess a little bit like what happened, when I stumbled over myself tonight and letting people down, right? There was that, but I think for the most part, that guilt and shame that eat used to eat at me, right? Even at the thought of, oh my goodness, all my friends are going to the beach and I've got to go to work, rah, 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 right? That that you know I was holding up other people who were depending on me to be there, and that makes me feel good, right? Because I was actually doing it for the good reasons, right? Not because I was feeling guilt and shame, and right, that other people were allowed to do that, but right, Cindy can't do that, or I broke my chain of accountability to myself. It didn't even cross, none of that even crossed my mind. It was just like, oh, I hope they were okay, right? Not even thinking I could get yelled at, or right, I was caused, right. I just wanted everybody to be okay, and I'm just right. I feel okay about that, right? But it is in a little bit of being that student to yourself, right? And even though there was a lesson in that, being a student only meant that I was, right, rehashing something that I had done or had an experience in. And, sometimes we just go about life riding those waves, and we're right on to the next waves without even enjoying the moment of the wave that you're in right now. And then growing up to be an old man, and the only time that you actually think about that moment is when you can't even do that moment anymore, right? Being 80 years old and crickety, right? You're probably not surfing those waves anymore. But good for you if you are, because it's my plan, right? Not it's my plan. So if you're the first one to have gotten it down, well, I'm going to follow suit. And if you haven't, well, I'm still going to follow suit. Okay, you guys, that's it for today. I'm going to make myself, this one still, said I was going to make myself another cup of coffee, but I'm just going to sit here for a few, seeing I took a nap this afternoon. I'm going to stay up for a little bit later tonight and, right, set that alarm for sure, right? Because we don't want to break the routines. Every once in a while, it's great. I needed it. I don't know what we bumped into that decided to, like that milkshake in the bottom with the straw, but it happened, and I'm sure my sister took a good nappy this afternoon too. It hit us at the same time, but it is what it is, right? Tomorrow is back to work and that job that puts the roof over my head. Grateful for that job, right? That takes me away from being up here, and it just grounds me and it reminds me, right? I am in the middle and I'm trudging along just like everybody else, right? And in that experience, we pick up lessons along the way, right? Right? And all we can do is share that with each other, right? Because it's pretty much the lessons in our movement forward, isn't it? Because it's only known when it's known. And you have to have an experience, right? In order to get that curiosity, to get that munching, right? To make a little bit of movement forward 100%, right? And it's each one to our individual choices whether or not to be a little bit of a participant, right? Right? In that spectatorship, right? You spectate something, right? Just move into it. Have that experience because it's the experience that's gonna, right, give us a lesson, right? Help us to become a student, right? And if you get to that point, right, share it. Share what you learn. Share what you learn along the way because unless it's voiced, like I said, nothing's known until it's known. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer for tonight. I am, yeah, I'm good with that. You guys, have a good night. See you tomorrow. Bye.